Thank you, Sally.
Sorry, I don't know whether it was me or you.
Lucinda, give us just 1 second to get it. Lucinda, can you give us just a second to get it streaming on the website also?
Okay.
Thank you.
I had Cheerios for breakfast.
Okay. There's that. Can you mute her for now? If there just maybe not. Just if there was going to be background noise.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, no, because I'm not a host.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think we're good. Do you want to check
out there real quick? Be right back.
Okay.
I no longer hear you, Emily. I don't know whether it's me or you.
The room is just quiet. Can you still hear us?
Yes, I'll try and be super quiet then.
Just a second.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Lucinda, we're all set.
July. There we go. I'd like to call the July 21st meeting of the Quincy Farm Committee to order. Emily, can we do a roll call, please?
Chair Green.
Here.
Vice Chair Vanderwerf. Committee Member Sidlow.
Here.
Committee Member Rockefeller.
Here.
Committee Member Scott.
Here.
Committee Member Maniatas. And Committee Member Bennis.
Here. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with audience participation. Do we have anyone signed up?
Thanks, Laura.
Okay, Heather. Heather Fox.
Can you hear me now? I'm Heather Fox. I live across the street from Quincy Farm in the Sherrydale address. And I wanted to address you briefly. I have already written a letter, which I believe all of you have seen, to the mayor, pointing out many of the strictures in the conservation agreement that the consultants didn't seem to be aware of. Frankly, I question whether they ever read the conservation agreement. It seems to me that that group wants to play a game, but not read the rule book. And I object to the fact that they are going to be asked back in August and be further paid unless we have some contractual agreement with them. I feel that the money should be spent for carpenters to repair the gaping hole in the gates, and a painter to repair so that this pristine property that is being neglected right now be put back in repair. Also, relative to the parking, I spoke with the mayor who called me when he received my letter, and I understand that he has come to some agreement with Kent Denver that they are willing to have cars parked up near the school so that people could walk over to Quincy Farm for any events that are there. I know that he is also, the mayor is also well aware that the main house can only be used as an educational facility, as an interpretive facility, or as a caretaker's residence. And so he knows that you can't have corporate events or wedding parties that require a great deal of parking. And so I just wanted to add my voice to the chorus of people who would ask for maintenance and repair to be done on that property. I think that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
Steve.
Can you hear me through the?
Steve.
Yes, Steve Scobie, 4298 South Bel Air Circle. I'm also part of the Cherrydale neighborhood that Heather is part of. We're 34 homes, and I'm here sort of representing that group. Just a couple of comments about program. I think this meeting is about programming, and I just have 5 points to make. It seems to us that whatever programs that are not events would be consistent with the easement, which are sort of class oriented. Supervised classes, not just come in and come out. There should be a number limiting how many people are coming in for these classes. Let's say 25 people or something. Like Heather, my understanding is that Kent Denver is open to providing parking. I think that would be a great way to access the property for larger groups, 25 or so. And then really importantly, if we go down this path, I think you need a locked gate to whatever access there is to the property. So when it's not in program use, it doesn't become a trailhead for the Highline Canal. Those are my points. Thank you.
I wrote down 4. Did I miss one? I had class oriented.
Okay, I'll go through them again. Programs consistent with the easement. That was the first one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Oh, Lucinda, can you turn your mic on? Thank
Sorry.
you.
We'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes dated June 30th? I move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes of June 30th are approved. Next item is unfinished business, ongoing projects and budget.
Good morning. I just have a brief update about this item. So attached are the budget to date and the unaudited financial statements from May. And then just a brief security update that we did gate the east side of the farm on July 1st. We hung that gate up and we did walk the property as well with a representative from security and sound design to determine locations for cameras, glass break detectors, window sensors, and that type of security measure. So we are waiting to receive a quote from them. I will be able to update the committee once we receive that quote. So we are just really continuing to work through that list that I shared at the last meeting about security measures that were recommended by the police department and implementing those. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. So is it one company that's bidding this out, or are there several?
It's the security company that the city already works with. I'll let Jay talk more about that since he has that up, but it's the, oh, yeah.
You're good.
Do you
We currently have a contractor that we use, depending on that cost, of where it comes in. If it goes over a certain amount, we'll bid it out to other companies, but right now we have a contract with this company.
Do we know what the, can you go over the list of measures that the police department recommended briefly? And do we know, like, is there a timeline for those to be completed?
I apologize. I don't have it in front of me. There were things like adding that gate on the east side, adding gates on the access from the Highline Canal. So the bridge has a gate on one side of it. So we're going to gate the other side. Others are, installing these security cameras, and a lot of what security and sound design is going to take care of. I'm trying to think of
the foliage around the homes.
Mhm.
Stone blocks on the barns.
And I saw it been mowed and it looked great. Yeah, that's awesome. One other question I have on the budget, on the master plan consultant fee, does that include the HSAs too?
So this is, it partially includes the HSAs. So we spent some of the budget, or we started that contract for the HSAs and for the master plan in 2019. So some of it was spent in 2019 and doesn't appear in 2020. So a portion of this is for design concepts, a portion of it is for formworks.
Okay. So
the total contract for HSAs and master plan was about $89,000. So we spent about $29,000 last year, $19,000 last year, and then the remainder is this year.
thank you.
I have a question for Jay. Jay, when you have the proposal, can you forward that to the committee so we can have a look at it?
Yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem.
Once, thank you.
Any other questions on ongoing projects and budget? Okay. All right, next up is paper here, master plan draft program.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the public. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Chris Kramer. I am currently the Community Development Director here at Cherry Hills Village. I've not been here quite yet a year. And that is my title moving forward. However, starting August 1st, I will also be taking over for Jim Thorson as the city manager. By way of background, I have been a city planner and working in community development for over 20 years. And through a lot of that work, I've had a lot of great experience at working on community-wide master plans, neighborhood plans, corridor plans, public art plans, housing plans, a lot of sub-area plans. And as such, I think there's going to be an opportunity for me to have a role within this process. And, I think there's a lot of good work that's been done, but there's obviously a lot of issues remaining. And my hope is that I'm able to help come in and keep this project moving forward so that a lot of the money that's been spent so far is seen to fruition, but also so that it works in a way that the community is happy about, the committee is happy about, and ultimately city council is happy about. So with that, knowing that I'm probably going to have a little bit of a role in addition to everybody else who's put a lot of good work in, I do want to talk for a few minutes about some updates that we have with the master plan before we get into the program, if that's okay. First of all, the site plan conversation. I know that there was a lot of feedback provided to this committee on the June 9th and June 30th meetings. And as a result of that feedback, Quincy, the committee made some changes to the site plan, including to the draft site plan. That was just the first attempt at a site plan. You should expect those site plans and those master plans to change. After that first draft is released, it's just that, a draft. And the whole purpose is for it to undergo changes that better reflect the goals and the visions of the committee and the community. So as expected, there's changes that are going to occur. Those going to, ones that the committee voted on specifically, talk about reducing the amount of on-site parking to a maximum of 15 spaces. Also removing the fire pit and identifying areas to be gravel and remove the previous larger parking lot from the site plan. So those are changes that are going to happen with this next iteration. I would offer to the community and to the committee, that's probably not the last change either, right? There's probably going to continue to be updates as this process goes through a very natural iterative process where we get more feedback and zero in on something that makes everyone feel like it's hitting the mark. To do that kind of work though, we obviously need to go back and change the existing draft plan, the existing draft site plan. And so we are working on an expanded scope to bring to City Council at the August 4th meeting. It is not to create new plans. It is not for the consultant to go off on their own and do what they wish. It's really for them to continue to work with you as the committee to refine what's already there as far as making changes to what's in draft form. Specifically, there's a few things that are contained within that change in scope or additional scope. One is going to be a change in the site plan that we already talked about. Another is an additional open house meeting. There's been multiple open house meetings already, but there's certainly been a lot of feedback that folks maybe weren't aware or they didn't have a chance to participate. And we all obviously want everyone to have the opportunity to participate and be involved. And so the scope would include an additional open house to provide feedback to the process. Finally, there'll also be an opportunity to provide a presentation to City Council as well, to update them about the latest progress so they are up to speed. And there's also an opportunity for City Council to provide input into this process to help refine that plan. So the timing of this is a little interesting. Going August 4th really means that by the time we have the August 18th meeting, the draft site plans probably will not be completed by that point just because of the amount of time it would take to get those in front of you after the contract has been amended. Council voting on it wouldn't be the last step. We'd have to actually go through and do the contractual work. So likely that site plan for us to have those kinds of conversations again would likely be the September 15th Quincy Farm Committee meeting. Finally, there's also the remainder of the plan in addition to the site plan, which is the written narrative portion of the draft master plan. And as you know, that was still just a first draft, just like the site plan. It's an iterative process, and that will go through changes and revisions as well. And so that obviously will it makes sense from a plan making perspective to wait on making a lot of those changes until after we have the opportunity to hear from the community and City Council in addition to the committee moving forward. So the updated draft of the written narrative portion of the site or the master plan will probably not come until after there's that additional opportunity for input. So I just wanted to make sure, A, introduce myself and say, nice to meet everyone. And B, provide a little bit of an update on the process of the planning side of this. So that I think it does help set the table for the next portion of the agenda, which is the discussion about programming. Any questions for me?
Is it on now? Yeah, thank you. I had a question. Now, what form will the open house take place? Would it be a charrette like the other open houses, or how will the public know the changes that have been made?
The changes to the site plan specifically? Yes, I would imagine there would be a station specifically highlighting the site plan, and then both visual and verbal information given about what's happened since the last time there was an open house. So that it wouldn't, you wouldn't just, if you're a member of the public, you wouldn't go there and just guess. It wouldn't just be the newest version and call it a day. We would absolutely want to highlight and call out those changes that have been made by the committee since the last plan.
Will they be paid more money for that?
Will they be paid more money
Yes, design consultants.
to perform the graphic updates to the site plan and then helping host and the open house? Yes.
Because I kind of question that, because I think they didn't do their homework enough in interviewing the closest neighbors and so on, the neighbors across the road.
Sure.
So I question that.
Well, in my opinion, the good news is one of the best things about all the participation that we've had at PTRC, at City Council at this meeting is, we have folks who are aware and very involved in the process. And I know that sometimes when people come to speak, they sign up. We don't always get email addresses, but I would just say to the public that's here right now, to those that might listen or be on YouTube, if you want to receive notice about this, separate than just going to the website or something on your own, please email staff and we will ensure that the mailing list that you receive a notice as soon as that meeting is scheduled, so that folks have an opportunity to be present and provide their feedback. We definitely want to make sure those folks that have been participating recently that you're concerned about are absolutely participating in this next process.
Thank you.
So two things. One, when speaking to the consultants about this revised fee proposal, I think that the foundation or structural aspect of it should be addressed as well, based on the findings of doing a test hole next to the big barn. Because that's going to be critical to the programming as well as the costs associated with that structure and any other structure on the site.
I think there's an opportunity to get that as a cost item, and then when we take it to City Council, they can, not that it's as simple as a restaurant menu and you get to just pick off the menu, but sometimes for certain ad alternates you can do something like that. So I think it probably makes sense to maybe try and have them price that out, and we can include that.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that as programming goes forward in the master plan. And also to address, it's hard to determine or guess at what the scope of work that these consultants were to provide based on their original contract. So I think there's a lot of not enough knowledge about what that contract specifically was for. To answer questions like, well, they didn't do their job, and should they be paid more to do updates to this draft? I think you have to be informed about what the contract said that they signed up for before you start making those kinds of assumptions.
I think that's an excellent point, and certainly when we take this to City Council, there's that conversation about any kind of scope additions would not be done in a vacuum, and there's every opportunity to make sure that council is fully aware of what's already been approved and spent.
Anything else, Chris?
That's all I have. And again, nice to meet everyone, both in the public and on the dais.
Great. Well, thank you for that update. I think what we want to try and do, I apologize, I have a meeting I have to be at 10:30, so I will need to excuse myself no later than 10, but that gives us an opportunity to go through our conversation about programming. And as we've noticed, it all works in conjunction together. So finding out what the structural integrity is in particular buildings can influence the way we program the space. I think our best option at this point is to think about the possibilities and the flexibility that these spaces provide. And then we can further refine our thinking as we get new information about particular structural elements. So with that in mind, I think let's assume that money is no object as we do our planning and kind of look at the breadth of opportunities that we have to share this beautiful property with the public. And then as we find out new information, like potential foundation issues and things, then we can rethink those ideas. Does that sound like a framework within which we can work? Okay, to get started, Emily, can you put up Exhibit A,
Yes.
please?
I actually have it broken into parts, if that's okay. So it's a little easier to read.
So everyone can see that. So drawing on the.
Time out.
Sorry, trying to make it behave with Zoom is fun. Okay.
So back in October of 28, this group drew on the work that was done by the Visioning Committee and looked at the mission statement that they proposed for their work and refined it a bit and created a mission statement for Quincy Farm. And I want to go over the mission statement and the guiding principles, and I want to make sure that that it still makes sense in terms of how we think about the framework for our programming and the use of the property. So the mission is enriching the lives of youth, adults, and families through conservation, educational opportunities, and the experience of a historic, is it an historic or historic Colorado farm in a natural setting. Does anybody have any comments about that?
Lucinda, as an old English teacher, I used to be an historian.
We'll make that change.
I actually have to step in. I thought it was an historic, but Emily did look it up and
We searched for it and it was a usage question, I think.
Becky, but I think that the educators gave in to really border saying
We can look at it again if you like and get confirmation. But in terms of the language, we wanted to shorten it and we wanted to highlight those things that are directly out of the conservation easement. So does anybody, are we still on board with this?
Can I comment or is it just?
No, unfortunately
Okay.
not. But I'll tell you what, shoot me an email, give me a phone call after the meeting or any one of us. Yeah, thanks. Okay, no change. So we will continue to work within this mission statement. The guiding principles were an idea that we developed to kind of give direction to the master plan so that when we developed these guiding principles, we wanted to use them as a guideline to help the way we think about structuring the master plan and its format. And so we're going to list these guiding principles at the beginning of each section so that folks understand what kinds of things we were thinking about when we put this together. So in the programming section, which is midway down here, can you scroll on down?
Yep.
And this is one I want to have a bit of a conversation about. For programming, programming must conform to Kat's vision for her property. The city of Cherry Hills may hold specific events, but educational, for CHB families or citizens, but educational programs involving children should not give preference to any group or institution. And classes and programs should be marketed to districts surrounding CHB as well as those that exist within the village. I would like to reconsider number one. And the reason being is that over the past 9 months, I think we've had a lot of conversation about what the definition is of Kat's vision, and we've heard lots of different points of view. I'm not sure we really know Kat's vision. What we do know is what is contained in the conservation easement in that document. And to that point, I had a conversation with Sydney Macy last week and kind of asked her that specific question. And she said that really they created the document to restrict what they did not want to see, but left open the possibility of what they did want to see. And they focused specifically on buildings and what those uses should be for those buildings and the preservation. So taking all that into consideration, I think that we've got, again, a wide gamut and opportunity of things and potentials. And we've seen feedback in different areas on all of these things. So my preference would be to say programming must conform to the conservation easement is how I would change that. Can I get some discussion on that?
So, I agree that, I think a lot of us might talk about what Cat liked and what happened, with children on the property, but we do have different ideas. And I think conforming to the conservation easement and which maybe is consistent with our mission to maybe vertical to those things.
Any other comments?
I think that's really. In the absence of having cat here, I think that's probably the only thing we can do. Otherwise, we're gonna go around in circles, just trying to figure out and argue with each other to what actually the mission was. And to the extent she wanted to, she got put into the conservation easement. So I think that needs to be a document that we got.
Madam Chair. May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So the mission and guiding principles that were established in October 2018, just to make sure that we're all talking about what they really are. These are not principles. These are principles that this committee is using. These are not city council adopted. These are in no way, they're just a framework for you to use when going through the process. And that's all, correct?
Correct.
And so therefore,
They will be called out in the master plan.
Oh,
or at least that was,
sure.
That was the idea, is that it would list how we came to these conclusions.
Makes all the sense in the world. I just, I wanted to highlight that because, I think it's completely appropriate for those to not be frozen in time and for those to be a little bit of a living reflection of what you, since they're your guidelines, your reflection of what the guidelines are for you as a committee. And so it is wholly appropriate for you to be able to not be stuck when you didn't know everything that you know now. And so there is an opportunity for you to update those. And so I just wanted to highlight that for your discussion.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments? Are we good with this change that is proposed as a guiding principle? All right. Having said that, could we move Emily to, I guess the next step, can we look at the survey results?
Yes.
Thank you. So this survey was drafted and adopted after our visit. There was a small group that went to one nonprofit that is under a conservation easement, that we looked at program opportunities there. It's known as Lowell Ranch or the Colorado Agricultural Leadership Foundation. And that, we didn't have a chance to debrief as a group. And so we drafted this survey to get some immediate feedback on things that we saw specifically at that property as it related to what might or might not be applicable at Quincy Farms. So we wanted some good real-time feedback from the group that attended. And so these are the survey results. It's not a big sample. I believe about 10 people responded total to the survey. I think there were a couple more than 10 were there more than 10 at the visit? I can't remember. The survey is anonymous, so we don't know who responded to what question or how, but I wanted to briefly go through that because it helps, I think, help narrow down some of the things that we've been thinking about. So, this is a graphic that shows what kinds of animals, we first talked about animals, what kinds of animals would be best suited to Quincy Farm. The top three were chickens, goats, and horses of the survey. So people could check all the ones that they wanted to. Okay, we can go down to 2. And then we asked, how do we see youth visitors most likely interacting with these animals? And the choices basically were viewing, petting, or feeding on a per visit basis, grooming, feeding, assisting with care on a regular basis, grooming, feeding, assisting with care within the context of specific programming only, adopting an animal for the summer, project-oriented work, and I don't see youth interacting with animals. And can you scroll up just up a little bit so we can see or down, I guess, sorry. If you can keep going. So what we saw here is that we see youth of the survey population, grooming, feeding, assisting with care within the context of specific programming only, by number was the highest response, and it has a fairly low standard deviation. So a lot of people, that means a lot of people agree with that statement. Okay. And we can make this report available to everyone so you can see it does include the standard deviations and the variances, so you know where the responses came from on each survey. Okay, we can go on. I think that's the same question. I don't know why it does that. Then we asked, how do we see adult visitors interacting? And same thing, the response is in the context of specific program. Okay, and I think the deviation there is pretty similar to a fairly low standard deviation. We can go on. And this question, I think, is important because it helps us define relative priority of use of the space. So in terms of priority within the conservation values defined in the conservation plan, what's the space that you would assign to animals and caretaking? And most people said average priority. Okay. So we can go on, and it was on a 5-to-1 scale. What was the standard deviation on that one? And anybody jump in if you have questions about any specific. So a little wider variance on this, but it came in at 3. So average usage for animals. And then another key question, should space be made on the east side for horses to be ridden on the property, not just stabled there or used in the context of a specific programming? And the answer was pretty split in the middle, low standard deviation here, okay? Not everyone answered this question. We only had 5 responses out of 10. So then we wanted to know, in what ways can the pony club tradition be honored if we're not anticipating horses being ridden or exercised on the property? And we can just scroll through these slowly, I think. Go ahead. Would you like me to read them out loud? Is the print too small for folks to see? Okay. Yeah, I'll take a minute to do that. Okay. I believe that the equine tradition should be honored, as that was a main feature of Quincy Farm and important to CAT. I think that the form of this may be altered to fit current capabilities, and management could be adjusted over time depending on resources and management personnel. It is quite a responsibility to care for a horse 24/7. This certainly can be part of the farm and could be anything from teaching equine management with a horse farm resident full or part-time to periodic equine teaching as an integral part of the program. With pony clubs, kids learn equine husbandry and responsibility. Whether a horse lives on the property or comes to visit will depend on personal and resources and could change over time. I believe from what I've heard that CAT invited kids in based on equine teaching and her love of horses and taught them basic skills of animal husbandry with horses as the model. Other animals, small to big, could vary depending on programming. In other words, we don't need to create an exact replica of QF as CAT knew it. The next response is either have a current pony club present a program at the farm and or museum with pictures, videos, stories, etc. Another response was there are others who are more qualified to answer this question. Scheduled staff tours of the east side that introduce visitors to the history of the property will describe what pony clubs were and CAT's role in her pony club. We should have some of the ribbons and photos CAT had displayed in the big barn on display for tours. There might also be a description of the same information on display with memorabilia for those who do self-guided tours. Then the next response, I'm not sure honoring the pony club tradition actually depends upon having horses at Quincy Farm all the time. There might be events throughout the year that would bring in horses, but unless the right nonprofit or the right person can be found, I'm not sure the tradition can be continued. Courses for kids on how to take care of horses and manage a barn, and we should provide historical information, photos, ribbons in the big barn so that the visitors can understand the role of Cat Anderson's Pony Club in this community. Thank you. All right, next one. Now, an alternate use and a conservation value that is described in the document is agriculture. And that includes loosely the plant material and study of gardening and horticulture, what gardening amenities are important to include at Quincy Farm, to check all that apply. So we saw kind of the top 3 to 4 are the orchard, vegetable gardening, and herb gardening. Doesn't exclude, we did get positive responses on the other items, so those are certainly open to be included. And how do you see youth visitors to Quincy Farm most likely interacting with these spaces? Again, came out plant study and age appropriate specific programming and participating in a harvest. Okay, so not a passive activity of touring and not a more intense activity of adopting the row. How do you see adult visitors to Quincy Farm most likely interacting with these garden spaces? This is adults. Again, check all that apply. And again, it is in the context of specific programming, participating in harvest, not so much an ongoing adopt a row, growing an individual plot, or touring. So small programmatic activities. And this is a question that can start discussing today. We may not get through it all. We'll see how it goes. According to prior approvals from Colorado Open Lands, visitors may only enjoy the west side of Quincy Farm when a docent is present. What do you think is the appropriate access for the east side of the property? And can you scroll down so we can see the deviation? Yeah. The property should be open only during designated hours when a docent is present, was the #1 choice, with a small standard deviation. How much space should be devoted to parking on the east side? Again, small standard deviation, 15 spaces plus handicapped access. Then these are questions that were more specific to the actual visit to Lowell Ranch, and asking respondents to get back with the ideas that they liked that they saw there that would work at Quincy Farms. So a lot of good ideas here. Again, none of these are mutually exclusive, so they all can be considered, I think, in terms of future programming because they have appeal within this sample size. And then what would not be applicable at Quincy Farm? So cattle ranching, noise would likely be a concern to neighbors, which is why I excluded chickens, for example. I also think volume of guests at one time is an issue. This is at odds with having a valuable asset being underutilized. The solution might be to take a long view and work backwards from there with a slow implementation. Further, things will change over time, which may reduce concerns about specific aspects and programs in the future. Cattle and horses. And one of the serious undertakings at Lowell Ranch was the raising of animals, which are then eventually slaughtered. They're not on the property. I do not see this happening on QF except for dairy cows. This is not really the history of QF. Plus, I see lots of pushback from neighbors. I don't know if it is still considered fun for kids to learn how to milk a cow. Lowell Farm had lots of buffer between it and neighbors, so this was not a problem. I see animals on the farm are ones that children can enjoy interacting with and learning about. If we are teaching environmentalism, we should point out how that farm animals contribute greatly to climate change. A recent study noted that if farm animals worldwide raised for food were considered to be a country, they would rank as the 3rd greatest global warming country in the world. I don't think large animals such as pigs, turkeys would be applicable at Quincy Farm. I don't think we would have 4-H projects either. Greenhouses. And then I do not believe that youth in our community will sustain the behavior needed in animal raising activities. While I agree that visitors should be able to drop in and experience life on a historic farm without the need to be involved in specific programming, I do not feel that city resources should be devoted to animal care on a sustained basis. And then the following information is demographic information. I think we just need to scroll down to the last one because I think there was any other. There we go. And what else would you like to share? Please comment on any question above, provide additional thoughts. With animals, start small and increase size and complexity depending on resources, in-house manager, caretaker, and programming. I believe the 4-H and FFA models as seen at Lowell Ranch could certainly work at the farm. I believe that both kids and adults could operate as volunteers and should be encouraged. They would need supervision that would be related to programming, certainly initially. On the east side, if drop-in occurred, it should be on certain days unless someone were specifically available to greet visitors. This could change over time. I believe informal spaces could be planned on the property for equine visitors or residents. For example, the old arena could be naturalized, but left as part of the east side pasture and could be mowed or otherwise cleaned up without committing to a formal arena as that currently exists in the city center. The areas planned as demonstration paddocks could be planned and used depending on programming. Parking in its final iteration should be fewer spaces than originally designed in the first draft of the master plan. The space in the east pasture could be mowed on occasion if more room for parking was necessary. I believe horses and equine teachings are integral based on cats' interests. The form could evolve based on resources and residents. Orchards should be present but not extensive, as quite a bit of maintenance is necessary. Think family orchard to start. If horses are to live on the property, entry and exit areas should be planned, whether in front of the gate or by a bridge. Ducks could be added. I found it interesting that Lowell Ranch depended heavily on volunteers. Brooks say that they have around 300 volunteers. I think it could be important to have a volunteer program, noting that there is a fair amount of effort in doing this. CHLP has indicated they could come up with volunteers. Volunteers could weed and water a vegetable demonstration garden. They could weed and water flower gardens. We might be able to get volunteers to the property to do amateur maintenance like painting. Though the work day we had prior to our open house probably didn't really attract a lot of people, I would also like to point out that there are a number of villagers who head for the mountains on the weekends. I live directly across the Highline Canal from Quincy Farm and lived here for 40 years. I was impressed with the raised beds at Calf Wool Farm. They are beautiful and well maintained by volunteers, I was told. I think that would be applicable to Quincy Farm. I was also impressed by the authenticity of Wool Farm. I think we should keep that in mind in relation to Quincy Farm. That is the end of the report, and we can share it out to folks who are interested. We also have the raw data if anyone is interested in that. This is a nice way to look at it. But knowing all the feedback that we've gotten over the past 9 months or so during this process, and maybe a little more targeted feedback here, how would you like to proceed with our current draft of the programming section? What recommendations would you have? That is Exhibit E, I believe, in your packet. Exhibit E. So Emily's going to pull that up for everyone. And I guess maybe what we should do in the interest of time is focus on the east side, which is on my page 3. So as you can, oh, I'm sorry, Emily, can you go back up to the top. So as you can see, the guiding principles are in this document. And this document was last considered and reviewed in September of 2019. So you have the context of all the work and all the feedback that we've collected to date and how we want to move forward. So we're going back to an older time, and I just want to make sure that we update this now to be current with our new feedback and new information. So did you all spend time looking at this and making notes? Okay, let's drop down first to the east side and let's see, because we honestly didn't spend a lot of time on this because, as we said, a more detailed use plan will be developed for the east side in the future. And that was because we still had a resident in the house. So what thoughts and ideas would you like to suggest? What language can we add to this to update this with our newer feedback. To start, Emily, I'd strike that paragraph that says a more detailed use plan will be developed for the east side in the future.
Yeah, sorry, I'm pulling up a Word version on my other screen so that
Oh, okay, that's
I can change it. This is the PDF.
So are we still suggesting that there's gonna be a demonstration garden maintained by the city? With opportunities for members to volunteer, is that still in the cards?
Well, I think what I heard was that the garden programming would be appropriate. And I suppose then that means we would establish a garden to enable us to do specific programming. And it remains to be seen how much individual activity might be available in the community to maintain specific gardens. But this programming idea will help inform the master plan, because we'll be able to say, okay, in this section, we need to have a vegetable garden designation for vegetable garden, in this section, we need to have designation for orchard stuff. So we're kind of looking at that section of the site plan that's on the east side that we're trying to figure out now how to redraft and direct a consultant to redraft that site plan based on our feedback on programming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it seems to me that this is still wrapped up in this access question. I don't know how you can plan a garden and plan for volunteers and kids and all that stuff until you wrestle with this issue of what is and is not going to be allowed in terms of open or closed access.
Well, do you want to take that topic up now?
I just think it's intertwined with gardening, maybe even more so than the animal issues, but the horse issues. But access, parking, the equine commitment of facilities and resources and money is one major issue that I think we have to wrestle with. Agriculture, as it relates to this access issue, I think is intertwined. And then finally, the parking issue, which we've got some guidance on now. If not location, at least size. But anyway, yeah. I guess if we can wrestle with access, that seems we have to resolve that somehow before we can design programming that fits the access model.
Any other comments on that?
I guess I will say something. Lucinda, I sort of wonder, and I don't know, I'm not the expert at all on any of this protocol, but it does seem to me that we need to decide the whole overview before we start getting into the programming. I don't know if this is the right time to introduce this. I had thought this was in our packet, but this was from the mayor, an article from the mayor. And it just, he just more closely shows the CAT's vision and the Conservancy and what would be allowed and not allowed. And so it's not really part of the programming. But I do have that, and I had assumed it was in the packet, but I don't think it is.
I think you're referring to his article that's coming out in the Village Crier in the
Yes.
August issue.
Yes, but he just emphasizes a bit more what is and is not allowed. And so, as I said, I'm sorry, I'm maybe not helping at all, but I sort of like what Gordon is saying. Should we be talking about the programming now when we haven't completed talking about the site plan?
Well, when did you say site plan?
Yeah.
You gotta keep that thing within about 3 inches of your mouth. The microphone.
I'm sorry.
Well, I think they are all intertwined. I think to the extent that we have had objections to the existing site plan, we have to design spaces that are flexible enough for future programming activities, and that's where I'm kind of driving this. I do not want to get into the weeds onto specific programming. What I want to be able to do is direct the consultant to say, potentially this could be here, potentially this could be here. These are options that could be here, these are options that could be here. And so we do have to narrow that funnel a little bit, I think. We have to say, these are the kinds of activities that fit within the framework of agriculture. And then say, here's a space for an orchard, here's a space, whether we need additional space for horses, all of these pieces have to fit into that site plan. So that's where I'm approaching the conversation from, not that I want to direct programming, I just want to provide potential options. And as we saw, for example, in the Hopkins Historic House, right, we know kind of ideally what kind of programming probably will take place in that space. What we have, and we know what can and can't be done on the west side in terms of passive recreation. What we have yet still to figure out is what the space on the east side is to be used for. And how we direct that site plan to provide those opportunities. So what does that big open field look like? What are the opportunities there? What what should it not be, maybe, you know? And so when we gathered this survey information, it's an attempt to kind of coalesce around that idea of, yeah, this could be there, this could be there, this could be there. All of these are options. And that's how I'm trying to approach it, is we want to make it as flexible and variable as possible, meeting your needs as time goes on.
Thank you. I just want to say though, the mayor's article does clarify about the paving. The paving is going to be not acceptable.
There's no paving in the plan.
In the, okay.
What I wish the consultant had done was specifically called out that all driveways are permeable. It was not a notation on the plan, but at no time did this committee ever consider violating the terms of the conservation easement, which clearly states there is no paving. We're in agreement. It didn't get put on the plan. I very much wish it had been put on the plan, because we would have not had a lot of these conversations. So, yeah.
I've got a couple of comments.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
Go ahead.
To tie on to Becky's point and Gordon's point, I think we need to take a few steps back and look at this in a context. And I guess the first thing that needs to be done is what is allowed there? What can we do? What can we not do for the conservation easement? Access to the property. Yeah, but my opinion is this. It's unfair for us to expect design consultants to come up with some sort of an educational plan. They're landscape architects. They're not historians. They're not authors. They're not in academia. I think that the expectation is unrealistic for them to come up with a comprehensive educational or programming plan there. So what I would suggest, and this is something that I've seen at other nonprofits, 501c3s, is perhaps we engage the Museum of Nature and Science, the Historical Society, and other organizations that are similar to that, and create a volunteer group of 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 individuals or professionals in their respective in history or geology or architecture, and allow them to provide some input to the committee so that we can come up with a more formalized and informed and educated plan to proceed with programming there.
I like your idea, but I think it's farther down the road. I think that what we really need to do is do what Lucinda is saying, that this is where the educational programs could take place. They could be about animals, about gardening, etc. But the more specific plans, it would be wonderful to bring a group of experts together and maybe include somebody from Cherokee School. And sit down and sort of say more specifically even what they need for their school populations, that kind of thing. And, but I don't think that that has to be part of the master plan. And in fact, doing that means another half year. So I think, oh, that's a wonderful idea. I think it happens later.
So then how about we keep it very broad and delineate this? I mean, I understand there's a lot of detail here and there's been a lot of detail with the, you know, the types of animals in the survey. Let's pull back a little bit and keep it a little bit more generic. And keep maybe the animals is one of the components there, one of the educational programming components there. So that way we're not getting too far into the details. And Christine, I agree, I couldn't agree more with you on that, but maybe we keep it a little bit more broad and a little bit more generic, but to include, of course, animals as part of the overall programming.
I agree. So, and we are doing this section, so the consultant is not doing this section. That's why we're working on this right now. So I do agree with those statements. I think what we have to do though is work with the draft that we have and then make suggested changes. So I don't know if there's language, do you wanna take this home and look at it and bring it back and with suggested language at the next meeting? Without, okay, all right. Shall we take up the issue of access? Okay,
Yeah, I don't have any answers to the way what's right or wrong, but I guess if we could wrestle with it for a while. If everyone thinks we have to do it now.
I
I
think,
mean, my point was that I don't know how you come to programming, garden thing, for example, without the access issue being resolved. For example, let's say you have a bunch of kids, 10-year-olds, on a Saturday morning, ready to go weed, and they're gonna have their hoes and stuff. Do we really think that reasonable to ask those kids to park down at Kent and walk a quarter of a mile or a half a mile, whatever it is, to this park and start weeding and then walk back? Does that make any sense in terms of programming?
Well, it does make sense, of course it does. I think that there's a fine balance between the educational piece and having Quincy Farm as an active, you know, catalyst for bringing school kids out to do the weeding, but also being respectful to the community so that there's not the density and noise. And there's a fine balance. And I think, as you said, I think that is what needs to be determined.
Well, I was talking about specifically the issue of parking and the fact that that would not be a program event. Saturday morning weeding, I guess, unless you establish a class for that. I know, I guess it could be attended with a docent, but I'm just trying, we gotta wrestle with these issues that are really contrary with each other in terms of matching activities with access. And I don't know how we get there unless you start. We can also start with what do you really want to do? What program do you really want to see? And then what's the access that has to match up with that?
Well, maybe,
Either way it would work.
I want to weigh in just a second here. Couple of things. First of all, at Kent Denver, the middle school kids run from the middle school all the way up to the dining hall, which is probably certainly as far as it is if they were parking in the parking lot, come over here. They like to get the kids to have a little bit of a run or something to get some energy out. I also think, I have thought about this quite a bit. Emily took me on a tour when I was just a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago. There is no room on the east side for a large school bus to turn around, but there certainly is room for a minibus to come in. And I think that if, for example, we had some kids with I don't know, walking problems of some sort, disabled, you could have a minibus, meet the big bus at the Kent parking lot if they're in for this, and it sounds like they are, to come over here. I don't think that we need, again, I don't think we need to worry about getting a big bus in there. We can't do that. We can't do that. But minibuses, yes.
I would probably err on the side of minimal disturbance. I mean, once you have vehicles turning around in there, because the roads are unimproved, it's going to generate a lot of dust. That's probably something that we haven't considered before. I mean, again, to dovetail onto your point, golf carts is also an option. I mean, there are other solutions for this. In my opinion, it diminishes the impact of the property by having 10 cars, 15, 20 cars there. So I mean, if I was making the decision, I would probably say we keep cars off site or nearby, maybe have golf carts that bring people back and forth, so that the farm is in its original context. But
The golf cart idea, I don't think you can have motorized vehicles on the canal. So I think that's a challenge, and I don't know if we have them on our city sidewalks. Yeah, so we may have to resort to the minibus idea. I mean, I don't know unless we get scooters or bikes. Well, I think to your point on, you can have different levels of access. So you could have the property open with a dosage for the general public. Then you could have volunteers would be allowed to come during specified work schedules, and they would presumably be supervised, and the public would not know about that access. I mean, the Lowell Ranch said, you drove in and it said open by appointment only. But you know those kids and their families are coming in daily to take care of the animals. So there are different ways, I think, to manage this access. I think what we have to do is think about what the potential is for large groups, because I think I've heard a lot of people say that that's less desirable. So how do we can have multiple different accesses, I think. And I don't know that I want to get into parking yet. I kind of want to drill down if we want to talk about access, what does that look like? Because it is a key issue that has to be determined. We saw in the survey, I think, that a lot of people wanted programmatic access only and or with a docent. So I think we've got the beginnings of moving towards some ideas here. Go ahead.
I want to say one other thing. If walking from the parking at Kent, they go by the pond. They could make a stop at the pond.
So with the east side, we can talk about all these specifics, but I think this is a little more of a general plan here. The east side, I think you need to plan on the future, meaning that you designate some of the structures that are going to be accessible, like the current caretaker's house, that barn that's converted to a residence, big barn, and then you leave the other structures as agricultural structures. So you don't spend a lot of money on those, getting them fixed up, but they can serve the purpose in the future, whether it's the near future or a little further along for the animals. I think also some of this, the agricultural piece of the gardening, that should be part of the master plan. It should be a plan for that, as well as the orchards, which can start small and phase it in until if it has the demand that you think it might, you can bring more on board to the piece. So as far as accessibility, I think you limit that access to the east side. The east side is, for the conservation reason, it's more accessible than the west side, but I still think you should limit it until you get these things going. But also having a bigger picture of where it could go. Could you have horses on there or other animals full time? Well, you ought to have a master plan set up to account for that. Not necessarily you have to build it right away, but have the ability to phase it in. Same with the garden. So those are my 2 cents about the east side, which certainly can be reworked in this exhibit E to spell that out. By getting in, some of these other specifics are really important to talk about, but I think it's better to get the consultant some of these bigger picture pieces of where they need to modify the draft plan to accommodate this type of program. Because from the survey, what I gathered from it, it's not too far different from the way that I've heard that Kat was running the property. She had some smaller programming on the east side, people interacting with animals and things like that. and the west side is a little more private. So, and that's the way the conservation easements seems in my mind to be set up, and that's the way that we should proceed with this.
Okay, so do we want to continue to talk about and come to some conclusion on the access? Do we have a consensus yet? Does anybody have any ideas in terms of what the side access should look like?
So I think one of the things that I'm hearing is that when people come onto the property, there should be a dosing, there's not a specific program. But I think that still means somebody, when there's a docent on the property, somebody could come on and just say, hey, I just want to sit down and have a picnic. So it's not like they have to hang out with the docent. They can, actually enjoy it.
I have a question, this is probably muddying the waters even more, but as we know, the Highland Canal is extremely busy. And so do people now, I don't actually know, come in there from the canal? I mean, you can. Or you certainly can come in from Quincy, whether it's part of an organized tour or something. As I said, I'm just probably muddying the waters, but I think you have to count that might happen too.
Well, Steph, do you want to address that about kind of the security and trespass issues? Because the property is currently closed right now.
Yeah, so both access points from the Highland Canal are roped off and marked private.
Are they
Yes.
the bridge and the?
Yeah, so the bridge is roped off and gated right now. And one of the things we'll be doing in the future is actually, instead of just having a rope and a sign, is having a gate at both of those points with signage as well.
Hi, it's Sally.
We go by there every day, and the gate is, let's see, the gate on the east side doesn't close, does it? The gate to Quincy.
There's a new gate installed.
There's a new one, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Sally here. I believe, you just start simple and small and a way that you can control. So I think the thoughts about beginning with access regarding access limited to programming is not a bad way to start. And then as programs or opportunities develop, then access can expand.
So put something to that effect in the master plan about access. Draft it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to think of access. One is physical via, bridges and entrances, and then access is related to docent programming and things like that for individuals. So I know that we are kind of talking about both, but in terms of this programming part of the plan, I was thinking more formally about how do we begin? What does access look like? And I just think related to programming so that it's small, so we have a way to control it. In other words, whether it's visitors coming at certain times or visitors coming only related to programming, and then groups. So I was referring mainly to programming, not to physical bridges at this time.
So what other thoughts do folks have about how we should frame this conversation and what should be included in this section in the document? We do list potential partners, it's in there. And I think the idea is to keep it as broad as possible so that options are available.
I'm sure there are more potential partners we could come up with. Also, I think, in the interest of being as broad as possible, that even though, the, Berry Bush patch didn't score high, we might still put that in. But that, that's a possibility. We could put the orchards, and again, I like the idea of starting small and sort of, making sure that things can be cared for before jumping in with both feet and discovering that there's more making standing there.
Okay, seeing our time is 9:55, I guess what I'd like to do to wrap this up is I don't think we came to a complete consensus other than start small, control the access as much as we can at the beginning with the idea that maybe it'll expand in the future depending on need and what programming occurs. If you all could look at specifically Exhibit E and the other documentation that was shared and think about it in the context of this little bit of survey and what you want to see in that section on the east side, because that will help us finalize the work on the site plan. So we can identify, what should be there and what shouldn't be there. I mean, presently we have that walking loop and the riding loop and orchard, but we don't have some of these other spaces called out. So it will be helpful for us then to be able to say, yeah, we do want to see space for these areas, and then be able to inform the consultant to put that on the plan. So that's your assignment for next month, is think about that and think about how it all interconnects and how we can go. But I want to finish getting through the agenda. It looks like you wanted to say something, Becky, so we can wrap up at 2.
Who will be meeting with the consultants?
Well, we're a long way from
Do you
meeting with the consultant. Right now, what's going on is Emily and Chris are organizing a new scope of work that they will deliver. He can speak to that.
Yeah, I think we'll obviously have the opportunity to discuss the ongoing changes to the site plan, the text narrative. The programming discussion you're having here today is a good example. We're going to be ensuring that they are incorporating this into their plan. The one benefit of the consultants that I would point out, there was some discussion, a chicken and the egg discussion today. What comes first? I would offer to you in a little bit of an abstract, this programming discussion is important right now. If the plan eventually called for, maybe there's an entire classroom that is being taught at a given time, but on the number of days that it's used is fewer, that has different site characteristics than a handful of people, but maybe more days. The circulation of the site will function differently. The amount of restroom facilities will need to be different. Those are all things that the staff can work with the consultants on, making sure that the site can handle whatever the vision is for how it's going to be used. So I would offer, I think that our discussions with the consultants can help reflect what you guys are doing here today. And with your homework, assignment for next month.
So Chris, I guess what I'm hearing you say is that the programming dictates then the site plan.
I would,
to a large degree.
it's not that clear cut. There's also site limitations that some programming is just not going to be available. I would offer it's a little bit more iterative, but there has been some work done. It sounds like there's a little more on the west side, but there's been enough work done on the site side, physical characteristics, that I think the chair is spot on, that this is the right time to have some of those broader conversations about programming. I couldn't agree with you more. There is no need to start talking about, 10 chickens versus 2 pigs. That is far too detailed. But do we need to have space for medium-sized animals? Do we expect those to be cared for by students on a daily basis? Or is there some other way of caring for those animals? That is the type of conversation you've just started to dip your toe in. And I think that's appropriate because that will really go a long way towards helping us understand what the site needs to support that type of program.
To me, that sounds more of an academic endeavor, and that's something that I feel is outside of the scope of design consultants.
The facilities or the programming?
The programming.
And that's why you guys are having that conversation.
Yeah.
It's Sally here. I think what I'm hearing from both of you, a little bit of disagreement on this, but I do believe that by understanding what you might like to see in the programming, what you think is possible at Quincy Farm will help design consultants either allow or not allow space for that. I think that's what I'm hearing. So I do think there is an importance to this kind of generalized concept of what you want to see for programming and staying out of the weeds of the details.
This is Chris. I think we're saying the exact same thing. I think the programming conversation at a high level can help then inform the site plan. And should the committee to say, oh, we would like to have 500 horses on the site. Well, guess what? The site plan, there's physical characteristics that would limit that. That's not possible. So it is iterative, but I do think at a high level, the programming can help inform the work that the staff and the consultants will do to make sure that the site can then function with that programming.
I have one more question before you leave. Sorry.
Do we need to weigh in at all about the caretaker?
No, my understanding is that the staff will be presenting a recommendation for a caretaker tonight at council. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So homework is to try and coalesce around all these ideas. And one part of site planning is thinking about specific uses. You look at your backyard and you want space for your kids to play on the turf, and you want space for your dog to run, and you want space for your patio, and you want space perhaps for a pool, or you want space perhaps for a large garden. We want to stay at this high level and say, what do we want what are the anticipated uses that we need to plan for? That's what will ultimately go in this document. It will not be at how many chickens and how many pigs, drill down level. So if you think about it in terms of how you use your backyard, think about how you want to use that space on the east side. What's the highest and best use that meets the needs of the conservation easement and provides, I think, educational opportunities that I think everybody would like to share. So that's your assignment. I don't know if we want to run real quickly through reports. Was there any new business? I'm sorry.
No, there wasn't.
Okay. The chair has no report because I've talked way too much today. Becky, do you have a report?
I do that, sorry.
Dino?
I do not.
Placina? Gordon?
Yeah, I have a short one. The neighborhood, as you know, our neighborhood has been negotiating with the Denver Water, specifically Howard Sherman has been, because he's got the pond, and the pond is becoming a test case for negotiations with other material reservoir right holders or water right holders, as does the city now, because of acquiring the farm, as does the city. So they have reached an agreement. Legal fees involved were not too bad. We had about a $5,000 engineering fee and a $5,000 legal fee. And the solution is going to be that Denver Water will put in the necessary new meter, and the line runs to Shermer's Pond, and will deliver water to them at a rate more favorable through that meter than what the typical house water rate is, in exchange for Howard turning over his water rights. back to Denver Water. So the negotiations have not yet started for the other two of us neighbors who don't have a pond. We're not a test case. The pond is the most difficult one. And so I'll just pass it along with something that I think the city can now take advantage of that deal being done now. I am reminded of another problem. I just wrote a check for flood insurance this last week. We had an engineering study done about 20 years ago that showed that our house was in danger of being flooded in a 100-year storm. I talked to Kat about that. Kat said, well, I've already lived through the 100-year storm. It was in 1972. And you don't need to worry about overflowing the canal banks. It occurred, but it occurred at the south end of the pond. I only mention that because there is some potential liability there that the city's got, not only for probably the Shermer House and the Stinson House, and I don't know the status of the main house as to whether, or the garage as to whether or not that's in danger at all in the event of one of these huge storms. Of course, it depends on where the storm is, and it's hard to predict that. But anyway, our decision was not to remediate it, which was about a $70,000 job, but rather just to buy the flood insurance. So that's what we've done for the last 20 years. And it's worked out okay because there hasn't been any big flood. But it's there, it's a risk out there, just like fire is. That's it.
Thanks, Gordon. Joel, did you want to talk a little bit about the test holes and what's going on with some of those historic structure work?
Well, like I said earlier about the consultants and their revised fee structure or proposal, there was a test hole down next to the big barn on the east side. Foundation is really shallow, about 2 feet. And so that ties to this programming piece. And that's why I said earlier that you might want to consider looking at the big barn and the current residents on the east side, as those are the opportunities to build into the programming, as well as the construction, any work done to those structures to prepare those in the future for a master plan that allows the public to be in there and for them not to be considered an agricultural structure. So that's my thought.
Great, thank you. Thank you for all your work on the historic structure too. We appreciate that very, very much. Okay, anything else on the agenda that we have not yet covered? Oh, Sally, I'm sorry, thank you. Sorry, Sal.
No, I'm good.
Thanks, sorry about that. Okay, is there anything else on the agenda that we have not yet covered? All right, so hearing none, I think we've got a plan going forward. I will be in attendance this evening at Quincy at the council meeting when staff is presenting the recommendation for a caretaker. We are gonna just continue to march down the road here, and let's keep thinking about how we fit all these pieces together. I expect our August meeting, we will have information, maybe some more information on what potential consultant expanded scope looks like, and then we'll keep going on with our discussion on programming and access and how all those pieces fit together. Okay, and if any individuals in the community want to reach out to us, please send an email to Emily. She'll make sure it gets distributed to us. We're available by phone, happy to talk on your comments about today or anything in the future. Okay. All righty. Thank you. We're adjourned.